I'm Mayor Tammy, and I am in my 15th year serving as your mayor. We moved here in 1992. I was fortunate to have my last child in the same hospital I was born in at St. Luke's in Boise. So fourth generation Idahoan. I love this community, and I hope you'll see a little bit more about why. It's people I serve, but also the people I get to work with. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the office of the mayor and my roles and responsibilities. So in Idaho, we have a couple of different forms of government. There's the city manager form of government or the strong mayor. In the city of Meridian, we have the strong mayor form of government. So the mayor is the city administrator. So I do oversee the day-to-day operations of the city, and I have 9 direct reports. I do have responsibility of all of our employees, which we have around 450. Ultimately, I do have the responsibility for oversight of our budget, but fortunately I have an amazing CFO that you'll hear from. But we oversee a budget of $154 million. That was the budget for this last year. And I do have the responsibility for all of you. I will not be responsible for your actions, though. You may see our police, though, if you misbehave. I do hire or interview and hire and select our department directors and office staff. I select the commissioners or citizen commissioners that serve on our boards and commissions, and I do interview everyone that applies. I'm always constantly amazed at our community, that we have a community that wants to be involved, and that's evident today. They want to add to the fabric and the decision-making process as citizen commissioners, and we value their input. I select them. They're approved by council as a body. I do oversee the vision, mission, and values of our community. So a lot of our decisions are made as we look at our vision and mission and our 5 strategic focus areas, which is strategic growth, economic vibrancy, responsible government, safe, healthy, secure, and arts, culture, and recreation. So those are the 5 different areas that we set our budget to, we set our annual activities to, and so it's all concise to moving towards that premier city that our goal is to be and to continue to be. Our care values drive us daily, and those are customer service, accountability, respect, and excellence, and that those abbreviations of CARE do mean something. We do have caring employees that take great responsibility for each of those values. In the different areas, I do look for improvements, and I work with our senior management team to continue to learn from mistakes, because we've made them, and we hope to not make them twice. But failure is one of those platforms that we move forward on, and our system improvements and finding greater efficiencies. So in finances, we do deliver a balanced budget to our city council every year that ties to our strategic initiatives and focus areas, and we hope leads to that premier community. We also have a capital financial plan or comprehensive financial plan, and you'll hear from Todd on that. But it is a vision into the future on how we're going to fund things. We have a save before you spend philosophy. So we do not have debt. We haven't had debt we did have debt for the police department, and we did learn from that. We said we didn't need to do that, so we save and then we spend. And that's a position that very few cities find themselves in. We have a dedicated city council, senior management team, employee group that is really focused on that. In health, safety, welfare, we really do try to connect. My biggest job is to connect people. Government is not the answer, but we know how to connect people to each other and finding resources. So we've re-engaged our faith community, which has been the safety network of every community decades ago, and is an essential element to our community and how we can address societal needs and social needs. And our faith community has really stepped up to be part of that solution. So have our nonprofits, our employee groups, and our businesses. So our need to connect in addressing that health, safety, and welfare is paramount. Also in partnership with our police department. Our police cannot do being a safe city alone. They need to connect, to partner with our community, and they do that very well. We, again, have a very engaged society system of citizens that want to be part of safe neighborhoods in a safe community. An ornament, that is language from the Idaho State Code. I think it was written in the 1800s. But it's really about the look and feel of our community. So our parks, our culture, our arts, our events, what that has to offer. And the comfort and prosperity, I think, is in community design, it's in economic development, and it's making sure that we are a full-service community. My official duties include I preside over city council meetings. I don't have a vote unless they tie. They are the decision makers on land use decisions, policies, and ultimately the budget. Even though we bring them a balanced budget, they set the budget and then we implement it. I sign contracts on behalf of the city once they're authorized by the city council, and I'm also the city representative on all of those documents. So I'm usually the one they sue, and that feels great. Police powers, I do have the authority to declare a state of emergency. I've done one in my 15 years, and that was during Snowmageddon. That was really fun. But I think that we take those responsibilities very seriously. I do train in the incident command system so that I'm well aware of what duties I have in the case of an emergency for our community, being the mayor. And I issue proclamations, so those are really fun. I can proclaim anything, and I try not to do just anything, but we'll do things that are important to our citizens, so they can be health related, and declare, oh, I know I wrote it down somewhere. I can do different proclamations. That my favorite one was when my grandfather turned 100. So it's to celebrate special occasions, and generally when we have citizens that turn 100, that is something to celebrate. We'll do cultural awareness days. We celebrate our youth when they win first in the state or some kind of competitions. And so that's just a fun way to engage our citizens and recognize things that are important to them. I'm also the public information officer in terms of when council makes a very controversial decision, it's usually myself or our city attorney that gets thrown in front of the camera. There has only been a few times I have not defended the council's decision. I don't always agree with their decisions, but there's been a handful of times where I've said, if you put me in front of the camera to defend your decision, I'm going to tell them what I think. And then usually they'll do it. So I guess that is a great strategy. Either that or they'll put our city attorney there because they're not going to want to defend themselves. And I won't either. So I also am our city's lobbyist. I'm the biggest cheerleader and I'm the squeakiest wheel. So we will convene groups to fight for things that we need in this community. And what I don't understand is why Meridian, the second largest city in the state of Idaho, continues to have to fight for everything we get. 10 Mile Interchange, Meridian Interchange, Locust Grove Overpass. We should have a Meridian or a Linder Overpass. Every single thing we have to fight for and to find strategies to bring people together. And I'll tell you what, my greatest strategy is you. They know I'm a squeaky wheel. They know what I will say. But when we bring all of our voices together, they are so much more powerful and have such greater impact that that is how we have found success in our city, is by having a squeaky wheel mayor and squeaky wheel citizens. It's awesome. It's a great recipe for success. Regional representative, I work with the surrounding cities, the counties. I'm involved in our Association of Idaho Cities. I'm the chair of their drug task force. I am very passionate about education, prevention, law enforcement, and treatment in our drug issues. I do not stick my head in the sand. We have them in our community, and we need to address them. And the only way we can address them is by facing them head on. Regionally, I do work together with others. It's the only way we can get anything done, because the air quality does not stop at our city limits. Our roads still connect, or they're supposed to, at our city limits. Economic development is not just our community, it's region-wide. We live in a region, and we have to play well together in the sandbox. I can marry couples, but I don't like to. I think that's above my pay grade. It's a weighty responsibility, and I told them, as long as I'm mayor, you have to be married. Are you ready to make that commitment? Because I could be mayor for years. So they usually go find someone else. No, they really don't. I've conducted less than a dozen marriages over time, and it's usually people I know very well. I married my son, I married my daughter, and those were the two most important ones, and probably my most nervous ones. I cry at every wedding, and I didn't want to cry when you're performing the ceremony, right? The only one I almost did that with was for an employee. And fortunately, her husband-to-be, or husband in the process, was a band member. He wore makeup, and he started to cry, and he looked at me, and he goes, "Is my makeup running?" And it was like, "Oh, thank you." So God saved me on that one. It was awesome. So I am usually the last one that our customers come to, hoping to get a different answer. And I do ask them to go through the departments that directly have that decision-making process, because they know our codes, and they know the rationale behind decisions. But for some real weighty ones, they'll land in my office, and that's probably the hardest part of my job, is telling someone something I know they don't want to hear, and that's really difficult. Business retention, recruiter, you'll hear from Brenda with our economic development. We go out and we do business visits to make sure that those that are creating the jobs in our community have what they need, know about programs that can help their businesses succeed. We want them to expand. We want them to expand here. We need family wage jobs in our community, and it's very important. Our biggest export is our kids, and we need to keep our kids here. They're our talent, and I am 50-50 right now. I have 50% that are here and 50% that I don't think I'll get them back. My career path was as a volunteer, like many of you. When I moved here, I grew up in Moscow, Idaho, and parks were really important. We only had one when I moved here, and so myself and a handful of other passionate people about parks got together and said, what can we do? We know that public safety is the priority of the budget. So how can we create a greater park system without threatening that funding priority, but work with the community? And it's been a real interesting ride. I never thought I'd be an elected official because I do not like politics. But I'll tell you what, when you start to get involved in your community, you roll up your sleeves and you start seeing things happen that you want to see happen. You're part of the solution that you hope to see. It's intoxicating. And I just fell in love with this community, and I'm very passionate about it. And it's just because of the path that I took. I really found that serving this community is what I'm about. So what I love about being mayor is there's no routine to it. And when I get my schedule the day before, I think I know what the day tomorrow is going to look like. It never looks like that. And I never have a free moment. Even when they finally schedule me open time to actually read email, respond, do my work, someone walks in the door, Cameron, and then I don't have free time anymore. So my staff is very used to getting text or email at 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whenever I sit down and start reading them. So the mayor job is 24/7. And my kids, it used to drive them a little nuts, but then they became accustomed to and expected that going to the grocery store with mom took a little bit longer than going to the grocery store with dad, for different reasons. But it is 24/7, but I enjoy everything about it. And usually my favorite part is engaging with our citizens. And in particular, I have Mayor Tammy's Walking Club. I walk in all 16 of our elementary schools, our charter schools, our private schools, and our homeschoolers, because youth, they're not only our future, they're our present, and they should be a priority for every healthy community. And I know that it's a priority for our citizens. That's why they move here. And so it is a priority of mine. Our employees, our business community, our special guest, that's Matt Damon up there. I got to shake his hand. That was pretty awesome. Certainly Dom there was one of our neighborhood stars. He does an annual Christmas present drive. Amazing little kid. He started at age 5 and he's still doing it. This is the 5th year, and he's got a big heart for serving others. Maybe our next mayor. And the worst is I'm not a morning person. Actually, people invite me to early morning meetings because they know I won't talk. So just to close this is these are the principles that guide me. I think they're very important in the office of mayor. Being authentic, I will always be who I am. I have never figured out how to not cry when I get emotional about things or passionate about things. It's usually when I talk about my family or my community, to be vulnerable. That we make mistakes, and you have to admit that. You have to show that you care enough to admit that you did make a mistake. And again, I go back to, we hope that we always learn from them. And those have been the most poignant lessons of my life, is when I make those. And my mistakes are always very public, so you probably know every single one of them. And to have courage. The only way we move forward as a community is to have courage, to take risks, and to always be willing to stretch ourselves, look for better ways of doing things, better efficiencies, as we continue to provide services that are essential to a premier community.
I've worked with Mayor Tammy for 16 years, both in this position, and I was a member of the city council with her for a few years as well, so I know she's a pretty tough act to follow. I've lived in Meridian for 33 years, and I'll tell you the same thing, that when I speak in front of groups, and traffic always is an issue to people, and I understand that. But I also tell them, I've lived here a long time, and 33 years ago, wasn't a lot of traffic. There was nowhere to go, and there was nothing to do. So there's a lot more things to do in our community that never existed, and so I recognize there's good and bad that comes with all of those things. But today, we're going to talk a little about city council. I know this is what you've been waiting for. I know you have to sit through Mayor Tammy, but that's okay. City council is our elected officials that oversee our budget and oversee policies of the city. We have 6 members of the city council currently. All cities in the state of Idaho either have a council of 4 members or 6. We had 4 members up until 2013, and then through a citizen process, and the citizens expressed interest for us to expand our council, the city council expanded to 6 members. And when I get asked the question of what do I think about that, I used to tell people, well, part of my job as a city attorney feels like herding cats. The first thing you don't do is ask for more cats, but you get what you get, and it works great. The people that we have are very passionate about our city. They are very interested in serving our city and doing the best for our citizens, and so we can talk a little bit about that. So what do? You know, they have 2 primary roles as the city council. The mayor talked about her role as the CEO of the city and the daily operations of the city and the mayor's responsibility towards that. City councils are different. They're not necessarily like a board of directors, but they definitely have similar type of characteristics to that. They oversee primarily the legislative functions of the city and the policy-making functions. And what does that mean? We'll talk about those specifically, but they kind of break down into a couple of different methods on how they actually carry out their work. They do ordinances, so they pass ordinances for varieties of different things. They pass ordinances for the budget. They pass ordinances for behavior such as criminal activities, police types of activities. They pass ordinances for that. They pass ordinances when we annex property into the city. That's the method of how it gets put into place. And they also do resolutions. They pass declarations from the council on how we feel about certain issues and things like that. They pass a resolution or an acknowledgement that we've done something specifically, and that's the way they address it. And please feel free to stop me anytime you want for questions. I know just me standing here talking isn't what you decided to buy into today, but you're welcome to stop me at any point. So let's talk about the individual things. Quasi-judicial, that's kind of a weird lawyer word. And this is probably the area that most of you have some observation of what city councils do. And this is in regards to land use decisions. The mayor talked a little bit about that. But the city council is the decision-making body on when people wish to develop their property into something other than what they're currently doing and to create something else. They have a whole process that we have, and Caleb and Cameron will discuss how that works, but ultimately the decision comes to the city council. And in that capacity, the law has decided they are almost kind of like a court or kind of like judges. So they have a responsibility to make sure they hear everything about this from both sides. There's a lot of legal requirements they have to adhere to and be aware of in regards to what the property owner wishes to do, as well as what the adjoining property owners, neighbors, and citizens at large feel about that. But they have to balance those 2 things. And like the mayor said, as a very property rights-oriented state, they do have to look at the property owner and what he wishes to do with his property, and also balance with the impacts it may have on others. But probably the hardest part for council members to deal with in this area is they have to make sure that everything they gather about that project, or whatever it may be, comes through what our public record and public process. So that's emails and phone calls and citizens' inquiry about what is happening and why are we doing this or why are we doing that, and whose stupid idea was to put this over there or do this. All of that has to be done through the public record. So I have to tell them to do the unenviable task of when you go to the grocery store and a person says, I voted for you, I want to tell you what I think about this project, they have to say, I can't talk to you about it. I have to have you come to the meeting. I have to have you send it to me in an email. I have to have it go through the public record because I have to make sure we're not having this separate side conversation that nobody else can hear. And it frustrates them, and I understand why, and it frustrates citizens a lot of times, and I understand why, but the law is very specific about that. So this is the one area that, this is where I tell the council members, blame me. Tell the citizen, my lawyer won't let me talk to you. I'd love to tell you what I think, but you got to come to the meeting. You know, you can tell Caleb, you can call Cameron, you can call me, you can tell me anything you want to tell me, but ultimately, if you want your voice heard, it has to be on the record, it has to be included as part of it. So that's an area that's very, very different for city councils in every other thing they do. Because everything else, your citizens' input is vital and important to them, and they want to know what you think. This is one where they want to know what you think, but they just want to know what you think at the hearing, through the record.
And I guess just to also add to that is the record is enormous. We get comments from agencies, we get written testimony. So the public hearing, and we also, by the time it gets to city council, you have a public record from the public hearing at planning and zoning. So council has to consider all of that. And so it's not just the testimony that's taken the night of the city council hearing. They have all this information that they've had to review prior to that as well. That is kind of their first opportunity to hear from staff. They do have the staff report, but to hear a lot of that. And I just, before you ask the question, can't you tell council how to vote? I have 6 council members, very different from one another and very independent. No, I can't. Just wanted to let you know that. They have minds of their own, darn it.
Yes, sir.
You referred to a law that mandates that the council and people don't talk to us. Is that specific to city council or to all public officials? Where does that come from?
So the question was, is my comment was that in land use applications, that the city council members cannot discuss that application while it's pending outside of the context of a hearing. So that is the narrow piece that we're talking about. It doesn't mean they can't talk to you about anything else that is of concern to you with the city. Traffic is a general concern. Talking about traffic is fine. The issue becomes more problematic when it's tied around one individual project. Then they really have to defer that to the public record, to the hearing, whether you come in person or not. I've been doing this a long time. I've been a lawyer for over 30 years. I'll tell you, it's a lot different in the world of email, isn't it, for everybody? You know, now we used to get people commenting, and they'd come to the meeting, and they'd be lining out the door if it was a big deal, and we still get some of that. But now we get 5,000 emails. And I don't mean that facetiously. We get 5,000 emails. It is so much easier to use that electronic medium. Now, I'm glad 5,000 people don't come to the meeting. We would never get done. So it does have some goods and bads, but that's really the only piece that narrowly where the council has to defer that and say, I can't discuss this project with you. If they have an issue about a general concern in the city, they can always have that discussion with you.
Where is that codified?
So that's case law in the state of Idaho. So it's been a number of cases, over 100 years of case law in Idaho in regards to land use, and that has evolved over time as to where that courts have told us what we can and can't do. And so that's the direction of where we give that to them. So the other things the councils do, they handle appeals. Occasionally they'll have appeals of decisions that were made at the department level, or another commission may have made a recommendation, or another board of the city. The council is the ultimate decider. So all of those types of decisions that can be made at staff level or commission level have an appeal opportunity to go to the city council and request them to be the final decision maker on that. And then, of course, there are other types of miscellaneous things that come up periodically. So if you look at our normal council agenda, we have a varieties of different action items that they will deal with on a weekly basis. And some deal with appeals, some deal with land use, some deal with other decisions that they're asked to do. On whether it's to fund something or to approve something, they'll get asked that almost on a weekly basis. So on the legislative side, what does that mean? So again, like a legislature, the council can consider various ordinances of the city. And that's an area where, again, they can have conversations with you, with your neighbors, with people at church, people in the grocery store. That's perfectly legitimate for them to have those discussions about what are those concerns. And those are, again, as I said earlier, those are ordinances that may be something that's very routine or mundane as part of kind of a process, which is passing an ordinance regarding annexation or passing our annual budget ordinance. Those are things that are sort of part of the legal process in the code, but then also other types of ordinances. And I listed just a few of them up there. The city council a few years ago passed a non-discrimination ordinance that our city, that we would not condone discrimination in any activity that we participate in. So we don't hold events at places that would be discriminatory in any fashion. All of our events are open to everybody in every type of walk of life that can participate in. We have different ordinances for special events. We have ordinances for in-home businesses, again, trying to deal with impacts in neighborhoods. We have door-to-door sales. We want to be sure if somebody's knocking on your door asking you to purchase something, that someone has checked that they're safe for to be knocking on your door. We're the first city in Idaho that I was aware of a few years ago that actually required licensing and background checks for people that ride the ice cream truck. We felt it was concerning to us that you had people driving around a neighborhood attracting children to them, and no one had ever checked who they were or what their backgrounds were. And we found in a lot of other cities, and some that applied here, they had felony records, and sometimes they were very serious felony records, and not somebody you'd probably want your kid buying an ice cream cone from. So we decided that as a city, and the council approved that we would check that and make sure that you could at least feel safe, and that you then as a citizen have the right when someone knocks on your door to say, I'd like to see your city license to be knocking on my door. Because in very limited circumstances, they don't need one, and that's usually very, very small, usually churches and school groups. Other than that, they need a license. If they don't have a license, they're not allowed to do that. You can certainly tell them to go away. If they won't, you can call a police officer. So those are the types of things councils pass on the legislative side, passing laws about, again, behavior, activities in the city, code enforcement, again, are trying to impact neighborhoods and things like that. Policymaking. So the council as the legislative body also can direct, like the mayor said for her role, she can be the city's representative, the council can as well. So the city council can involve themselves in not just the ordinances that we pass, but laws that are done by the legislature. They can go and speak on behalf of the council. They can go as a council representative if the council approves that and say, here's what the council's position on that issue may be. So they definitely have similar powers as elected officials to weigh in and participate in processes outside of the city. They also pass all of our city policies on how the city interacts, whether it's our financial policies, and Todd will talk some about that, all of our different policies on travel or how we purchase things and all of those things, a lot of our behavior and how our city employees are required to act or not act in the workplace. All of those policy statements are done through the city council so that they also have ability to weigh in as to what they, as the legislative body of the city, feel is important as to all of those different types of activities. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to mention too. They also pass on those, you see those ones that says some actions. Different programs come to the city. Some of them are funded by the city council's budget, as the budget they set for the city. Some are funded by other sponsors or donations or other ways that we've gained revenue for them. But the city council still has the authority to determine when and how we spend that. And some of those activities we listed up there, there's Trash to Treasure. Some of you may know what that is. We do that. We've done it twice now. It's a program that was started by our Solid Waste Advisory Commission on allowing people prior to what we call spring cleanup to put their materials out, and other people can go basically take this table you didn't want. Somebody else can come and take that off your curb, and then they don't have to pick it up with with the spring cleanup. They also have Recycle a Bicycle, was another Solid Waste Advisory Commission program where they have these bicycles that have been recovered that they then repair, put back into the community. And they did it once last year, they're doing it again this year. And the intent initially was to help a lot of kids with bicycles, and what they found was a lot of adults who had needs and couldn't afford a bicycle and didn't have the ability to have a car, and this was a great opportunity for them to also acquire a bicycle to be able to get around and get themselves around. So they've done various types of things like that the city council then approves through their policy-making process, and so that's just another area of what the council members do. City council is also, the mayor mentioned that she interviews and recommends and nominates every person that wants to be on a board or a commission of the city. If a city council member were to step down, she does then nominate the person to fill their place. She selects all the directors, and then all of those decisions then are confirmed by the city council. So the city council does get to weigh in on the appointment of all of our department directors that we have. We have 9, I think, currently that are appointed, myself included, that are then confirmed by the city council. We have, again, the boards and commissions. So that's another role that, again, is that legislative body that's the responsibility of councils. They also approve all contracts. Our policies require certain levels of contracts can be signed at the department level or even the mayor, and then other are required to go to the city council directly. So the ones that are over $50,000, which anymore doesn't take much to spend $50,000, it might surprise you, but buying one police car makes that. So anything over $50,000 requires council approval, as well as anything that has a liability attachment to it. So there are many types of contracts that want the city to either make sure the person providing us that isn't held accountable for things, or that the city is requiring they're going to stand behind their product, not just in a warranty, but in other ways that in case we get sued, they have a responsibility for their product. All of those go to the city council as well. So our current positions of the city council have 2 that are actually officer roles. We have a council president, that's Councilmember Wharton on the top. The 2 main functions of the council president is they act as the mayor in the mayor's absence, and then they also work with the mayor to set the council agenda. We do have a meeting every Tuesday of the month except for the 5th Tuesday. So we have a 5th Tuesday coming up in May, so there won't be a meeting next week. But other than that, every week we have a council meeting. Our second council meeting of each month is a workshop, so it actually begins at 3 in the afternoon, but all the rest of them on the 1st, 3rd, and 4th Tuesdays begin at 6. So every week there's an agenda. The agenda is published on Friday. You can subscribe to that agenda if you wish, and through our clerk's office, and then you can receive it in email weekly, and it just tells you what we're talking about, gives you some indication of the different topics that we may be discussing and things that we may be voting on. Those are then put together every Friday in the morning with the council president, and then published in the afternoon. Council vice president, Councilmember Kavner, he again acts as the council president when the council president is absent. That's their 2 main roles in those positions. The councils also are department liaisons. What we have in the city, which isn't common in every city, but each council member is appointed as a liaison to 1 or 2 departments within the city, and they then meet with them on a regular basis, maybe monthly or maybe even more often, with those departments just to understand what's going on, what challenges they're facing, what issues might be of concern to them, things that ultimately may be budgetary concerns that we may be needing to get the council's approval to do, some way that council has that connection to the department so they know, on a monthly, weekly basis, what's happening, what issues are out there, and also a way that if you were a citizen were to contact a council member to say, this is an issue of concern to me, they would then maybe have the means to go and find the answers for you or direct you to the right people to get the answers for you to assist you with whatever that concern is. So that the council president, our current process now, the council president selects those people for those positions and directs that. We pass a resolution to do that. And again, the liaison does a lot of other more what I would consider routine things, signing purchase orders, assisting with developing budgets, reviewing the financial reports each month. The finance department provides those liaisons all the expenditures every month for that department, and they review it. And if they have questions, they can go back to the director and say, what did you buy that much ink for? And I usually say, well, we're lawyers, we use a lot of ink. That's kind of how we roll. So those are, again, to make sure that the financial policies of the city are being followed. Yes, sir.
How are the president, vice president selected?
So the question was, how is the council president and vice president selected? They're selected by the council members themselves. Each year in the January meeting, they vote on, nominate and vote on who they want to serve as that position. It's an annual position, so they do it each January. So last slide, this is sort of my little facetious way of saying this. It says authority, and I crossed out individual council members. So councils as a whole only have authority together. Individually, they are your representatives. They are there to get your feedback, to provide you their feedback, to have that dialogue. But as authority, they only can do things collectively as a group. So that probably doesn't mean much to most people in the grocery store, and that's perfectly fine. So again, it's just to understand that the individual council member, when you say, I want you to make my road better, he or she can't. He or she can maybe affect that if 3 more of them wish to agree with you, and 4 of them think, as a majority, that we want to do whatever that may be, then they can. So it's to understand, a lot of times council members, that's a long explanation in the grocery store, so it's hard to explain to folks that I can't necessarily do that. But I think it's helpful in here to understand where their roles are and how their roles work with everybody else. Again, the council members are people that are very passionate about the community. They don't get paid very much. They do get paid. They don't get paid very much to sit through very long meetings and listen to a lot of people that are concerned or upset about certain issues. But they are there because they care, and they care about our community. So, but I wanted to understand that, again, collectively as a group, that's how they can exercise any of their authority. They have the ability to terminate the appointed officials. Sorry for all of us that are appointed in the room. They do have that power. They do create policies of the city, as I've talked about, and they also, again, receive those recommendations of the commissions and the appointments and all of that. But again, individual council members, they are there for you. They are there to answer your questions. And again, hopefully, we've given them enough information and tools so they can help answer those for you or direct you to where you need to go.